to answer a little bit further your question about why I got in architecture, it's precisely because, and this is may sound a little bit naive, right? Or I feel like the idea of having a positive impact in the world is important to me. And I think that through architecture and design, you're influencing the people of all, the life of all the people that are walking through your building, that are working in your buildings, that are studying in your buildings, that are living in your buildings, right? You have the opportunity to have a positive impact in the life of those people. And I find that so powerful.
All right. So, if you don't mind, let's just jump right in. And can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background?
Of course. Well, my name is Enrique Sanchez. I'm a principal at Studios Architecture. I'm originally from Mexico City. I was born and raised there. I actually went to college there. And I came to the Bay Area, God, about 22 years ago now. That's crazy to think, for my master's at UC Berkeley. So I actually never thought of staying, but one thing led to the other. And I found that this place really became my home. It really, due to its energy, the people, all of the stars aligned. And here we are, 22 years later, where San Francisco has become my chosen home.
That's awesome. Is there a reason that you picked UC Berkeley?
Yes, multiple reasons. When I was younger, I have an uncle who lives in the Bay Area, so I've had a chance to visit multiple times, and I really got exposed to coming here by the fact that this is such a diverse place, right? It just kind of like the idea of being surrounded by people from everywhere, like the specific energy that San Francisco and the Bay Area has. When I was looking at different grad school options, not only because of course, the great program that Berkeley has, but the possibility of thinking of places where I could be, this really felt like the right.
That's awesome. It's funny you say that because I was talking with Mark Cavaniero on Monday of Cavaniero Associates, and he said the same thing. So he was an East Coast guy, went to undergrad, didn't even study architecture as an undergrad, studied like a history, I think, with like a minor in architecture.
I don't know. I know that.
Yeah, and then came out to the West Coast to go to Cal, a master's degree in architecture. And like you, he's like, man, he met his wife, I think, and they maybe traveled a little bit, but they settled back down, and he started his firm, in San Francisco, like 25 years ago, I think he said. So it's funny. The Bay Area has a way of doing that too,
Yes, completely.
So, awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about what attracted you to architecture and why you wanted to become an architect?
Of course. So it is an interesting process. How it works, for example, in Mexico is unlike here where you go into college and you have a little bit of flexibility to understand what's going to be your major. In Mexico, you have to apply directly to a specific major, let's say. So out of high school, you need to know if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be an architect, right? So it's a lot of pressure for an 18-year-old to kind of like make this like, okay. But, when I was in high school, I really appreciated, I really enjoyed sort of like math and physics, but also kind of like really enjoyed my drawing classes and things like that. And, so I made an educated / hopeful guess that architecture would be a good fit. And lo and behold, it was. I felt very lucky to go. The university I went to Mexico is the National University of Mexico in Mexico City. It's 300,000 students in the university. 30,000 students in the School of Architecture. So it's a giant place, but I felt incredibly fortunate because the faculty are incredible. The people that go there, it's just. It's a very unique place as far as like the emphasis that is put on, the fact that the challenges that Mexico had, right? And it allowed me to understand a little bit better what was needed from a profession that really is such a critical component of building up what a country.
Right. That's awesome. That 300,000. Wow. I mean, here in the United States, we think of Cal as a pretty big school, right? UC Berkeley, and I would venture that the 30,000 that were in your program, that's probably the size of Cal undergrad and graduate school combined, right? That is, oof.
It is difficult to understand those
Yeah.
numbers, to be honest.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So what would you say, considering where you're at now, what would you say the hardest part of your journey has been so far in the design world or to become an architect?
This is how I want to answer. I think that um, people understand the value of design in many ways on a subconscious level. I think that people know when they go into a space where things have been thought out, they understand that it works, right? They might not consciously be aware of it, right? But the value that design is given by society in general, I think that there's perhaps not enough emphasis in the general understanding of the impact that we can have, right? And that is a little bit giving in the value that we can that is given to our work. I think
Right.
that one is really an advocate for what architecture can do, right? And I think there's many people out there that appreciate that, but it's a little bit of like you're a constant ambassador for the profession, right? And I think many people get it, but some people there's a lot of emphasis on cost saving or a lot of emphasis on repetition. Well, there's an opportunity to really do something that is profound and interesting.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you definitely did. It's funny, whenever I talk to an architect, everybody has this sense, it seems like, of it's a calling, right? It's something, it's not something that you would do to get rich, right? It's not something that you would do. Somebody was joking with me that said, I didn't do this to get girls and I didn't do this to get rich, right? It wasn't that at all. It was deep down inside me somewhere. I had this kind of creative part of me, and I just wanted to be able to express that. And I think that's one of the things that I hope that we can get through to some of the younger design folks is, it takes a while. It takes a while to get good, right? It takes, this is an endeavor, right? This is not something you do for a year or two and you work really hard at it, but you have a few secrets and you're at the top, right? It's just not that way. Some of the greatest designers are in their 70s, 80s, still working, right? And they're just viewed to have this wealth of knowledge. So,
and I think that's also one of the biggest advantages of the profession. You're constantly learning. It's not like you get to a point it's like, okay, I know it all. It is totally a lifelong journey where you're constantly learning and you get better at it, right? And it also allows you to really constantly be able to be surprised by it. To answer a little bit further your question about why I got in architecture, it's precisely because, and may sound a little bit naive, right? Or I feel like the idea of having a positive impact in the world is important to me. And I think that through architecture and design, you're influencing the life of all the people that are walking through your building, that are working in your buildings, that are studying in your buildings, that are living in your buildings, right? You have the opportunity to have a positive impact in the life of those people. And I find that so powerful.
Right. That's awesome. I don't think that's naive at all. I think one of my favorite books is Simon Sinek's Start With Why, right? And if you know that deep down core belief of why you're choosing to do something or what the impact that you're hoping to have, everything becomes a little bit easier to do from there, right? Everything, it becomes a little more, it's easier to wake up earlier in the morning to work on your stuff. It's easier to stay late and put the hours in that's necessary. That is one thing I hear echoed over and over again is the amount of time, especially as a younger architect, that you'll have to spend doing this, right? It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not for the faint of heart. And, but I remember in my first day of architecture school, the person who ended up becoming my history professor said, even if you don't go into architecture, even if you end up becoming something else, day three, if you are going to be making soup as an architect, you are going to be kind of like gardening as an architect. It's a framework that allows you to look at things in a very specific and special way. So,
that's great. I love it. You've already kind of answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. What would you say is your favorite part about your job, either right now, maybe as a designer as a whole, or just your role right now as a principal at studios?
So I touch on the learning component. I think the idea of constant learning is something that I find so gratifying about being what I'm doing. I think right now what I find that the part that I love about my current position is being a mentor to my team and being able to really kind of like understand what makes everyone tick, allow for that platform to kind of like allow them to grow and to be able to sort of like the best design comes from different minds coming, right? It's not the idea of the single architect coming with this brilliant idea. It's a talent. That's not how design works. It takes hundreds of people for a building to actually be there, right? And so I think that being able to establish an environment, a work culture where everybody feels empowered to contribute to the design of the building, that's something that I really.
Awesome. Great. I love it. Can you describe the process actually of becoming a principal at a firm, right? Kind of starting, as a young architect and getting to where you're at now?
Of course. The way I started at studios, actually, I was, when I finished my program at Berkeley, I got the opportunity, as a foreign student, you get what's called optional practical training. That allows you to spend 1 year working in the US without a need of a visa. So I was like, I want to take advantage of that opportunity. So I worked at studios. I connected with somebody who's like, studios would be a good fit for you. So I got there. And I really love the energy, sort of like the variety of projects and all of that. So after my OPT ended, I was able to sort of like get a work visa that ended up becoming then I was kind of like sponsored to become a permanent resident. And then, I slowly kind of like from entry level to job captain to project designer, and here I am as a principal now, right? So it is interesting to have spent a lot of my career in a single place, but when you find the right fit, it's kind of like that allows you to have all of this, as I was saying earlier, room to grow. It's been able to set deep roots and really have a sense of who we are, and now have an opportunity to really set a direction of where we're going.
Right. Love it. At studios, have you focused on any specific type of projects, or is it just kind of, everything? Because you guys are a really big firm, right?
Yeah, so yeah, to your point, studios, we have offices in San Francisco, LA, DC, New York, Paris, and Mumbai. So, and San Francisco is kind of like the birthplace of studios. And one of the reasons I've been there all that time is because we do a lot of different things, right? We do civic work, we do workplace, we do work with universities, sort of like media. It's all over through all of the time in the studios. I've been able to get exposed to everything. One year I was working on a project with SF MoMA at the same time I was doing a project with Nickelodeon, right? So kind of like very different ends of the spectrum.
That's awesome. I love it. Feel free to not answer this, but do you have a project that you're most proud of, or maybe that you just really enjoyed working on the most because of the team or the type of work?
I would say that the project that comes to mind is actually Nickelodeon. I think for multiple reasons, was a great team. I really enjoyed it was totally, when I was saying that it really takes a village, here our little village really put together what I thought is a great design. Our client was fantastic. And, up to these days, we have a great relationship with them. And I felt like we did a really good job where we were able to reflect who they are. The challenge for that project that was given to us is like, this is a place for art. Yes, we do cartoons, but this is not a place for kids. This is a place for the people who are coming up with these ideas, who are very creative. So how do you design a place for art? And that was a very interesting challenge. So it involved existing buildings, it involved new building, it had a great courtyard, so there was these landscape components. We did the interiors, we kind of like were involved in like the graphics, all of these things. So it was a very cohesive and sort of like it really kind of covered the whole spectrum of what a project can. So
Cool. That's cool. As a child of the late 80s and 90s, I'm very familiar with Nickelodeon. That's great. Um, so, everybody I've talked to so far, and this is one of the reasons that this program is in existence, talks about not being able to do it alone. Can you think of a person or maybe a few people that stand out in your mind that have helped you along the way?
yes, the first people that come to mind are I feel, I feel incredibly lucky to have had two parents that from the very beginning, since I was a little boy, really showed me what, the value of art, the value of design, being able to ask questions, all of these things that are important to what I do every day, being curious. So without them, that's the first two people that come to me. And throughout my path, I think that a lot of my professors have, both in college and during school, they all helped to kind of like guide me one way or the other. And even within studios, several of, who were partners now who were my bosses, now my partners, right? They have also been my mentors too. So, and I would say that many of the people in my team that, kind of like are my mentors, even though that they are coming from a different place too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Is there anybody maybe outside of studios in kind of maybe a leadership role, or somebody who has started their own firm, something along those lines, that kind of stands out to you as somebody you admire or really kind of look up to, respect?
That when I look back and growing up in Mexico, one architect that I really admired was, and who was, had really passed away at the time, was Luis Barragan, just because of the way that he was able to look at what Mexican culture was and made it into something so relevant.
Kind of like sports, right? We all have our sports heroes and people we look up to. Having people to, especially for our students, having people to look up to, right? Having people to say, this person did it, I can probably do it too. Because sometimes that's the scariest part, is getting started, right? You're standing at the bottom of a mountain, you see the mountain, and unless you can kind of talk to people who are in various states along the way, the mountain can seem insurmountable. So,
right. It's, if I can add to my answer, if
sure.
You don't mind, I think that as an immigrant, right, and kind of like coming here from a different place, my uncle, he had come here. He basically, my dad's youngest brother, followed a similar path as I had. He did his master's out here at Stanford, and he ended up staying. And seeing that kind of like that possibility really opened up my eyes to me and say, hey, I can do that, but it's important to have that precedent, and being able to be like, it's having those role models are essential.
Yeah, and it's a movement that is not a new movement in design or in anywhere, but it's one of the things that we're talking about. And in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have the just kind of the ability to have diversity and to be able to show a number of different types of people who have lived this life, right? And that's one thing that I hear over and over again is, doesn't matter what your gender is, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, right? If this is something that you want to do and you want to do it at a high level, there's people that have done it, right? And so we really just trying to bring those faces, this is a person who has literally achieved the thing that you're talking about doing.
Right.
Sometimes that's just enough. That's enough to tip somebody in the right direction, and they're like, okay, I'm going. So I love that. That's really important. Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up with one more about advice. But before that, did you have anything about your firm? I don't know if it was up and running again. I think it's a not-for-profit that you are involved in.
Yes. I feel very lucky to be part of the board of Creativity Explored. Creativity Explored is a local nonprofit here in San Francisco that supports artists with developmental disability.
Okay.
I feel very lucky. I'm a recent board member, and I feel very lucky about being part of the group, of the CE family, because um, kind of like designing spaces that are accessible to everyone is something that's near and dear to my heart, right? And we should not be designing for a few. We should be designing, and being able to be a part of an organization that's the core of who they are. They understand that art is an innate part of being human, right? So I find it's for me, it's just such a great alignment in the way that I operate in the world, and being able to support an organization that's really kind of like helping people to be doing what they want to be doing. It brings me great happiness.
Awesome. That's great to hear. It's always, this design community is like nothing I've ever seen in terms of so many folks are friendly competitors, but are really just focused on helping, right? It's not looked at like competitors. It's looked at like, how can we help everybody? How can we all benefit? How can we, take care of those that need to be taken care of? So
my position is that we're all in this together, all the different firms. You may be competing for a project, but you're not competing against each other. You're competing for a project, but you're all in this together. We all want everyone to succeed, because at the end of the day, that helps.
Totally. All right. So last question for you. What is the best piece of advice that you could give to maybe somebody who's looking into design or an up and coming design professional, architect, engineer, and otherwise?
I would say that, and I'm smiling because every Friday during the pandemic, our office has been, each principal has sent a way to connect with people, as far as like, to make sure that there's still a sense of culture in this. So this Friday, today was my turn. And I was doing a parallel between, something that has helped me to keep sane during the pandemic, which is a new hobby, gardening, and the parallels between gardening and design, right? And the idea that, my garden and spending time in it has taught me that, intent is important, that, kind of like nurture and tending go a long way, that unexpected things will happen, but at the end of the day, it's all part of the process, right? That putting the effort makes things happen, right? So my advice is that do all of that. Really, sort of like, at the end of the day, design is an exercise in hope.
That's excellent. Great advice. Awesome. Well, Enrique, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciated the foundation. If there's anything that we can do for your nonprofit, for studios, anything you guys need, please don't hesitate. And really, really appreciate it.